Hi, we can start the tour of the farm at the Fairfield Cemetery, which is located on a 5-acre parcel on the edge of the land that was purchased by the first generation of Osthellers in the valley. The cemetery was managed for a long time by Leonard Fulton, then Joe Fulton, our neighbor to the south of us. When he retired, my wife, at the time Ellen, and I took over caring for it for many years. It is a picturesque spot looking out to the west toward Fairfield. We have many generations buried here, from my great-grandfather Carl, who passed away in 1895, to my brother Todd, who sadly passed away in 2022. Here are some family photos that my daughter put together to give faces to the names on the stones and a bit of history to put them in context. In the summer of 1889, Carl and Christina, or Christine, I've seen it spelled both ways, arrived in Fairfield, Washington Territory with their 6 surviving children, Fred, Amelia, Robert, Lena, Will, and Augusta. This picture was possibly taken at the time the family first came to America in 1887, before they made their way west. Christine is holding Augusta, and Carl is next to her, and my grandfather Will Ostheller is resting against his knee. They'd left from home in a small village of Niedershelden on April 20th, 1887. They came to America for a healthier and more stable environment, free from the recurrent military conscription common in the German Empire at the time. Ironically, Orland would be deployed back to the region in 1944 during World War II, at one point stationed in Dusseldorf, which is less than 100 miles away from our ancestral home. Niedershelden is a small village next to the Sieg River, as you can see in these photos, or the area from the 1930s. It's located near a larger city of Siegen in Westphalia, in the western part of modern Germany. It had been ceded to the Kingdom of Prussia by the Prince of Orange in 1815 and was under Prussian control during the unification of the German states into the German Empire in 1871. After leaving the German Empire and arriving in the U.S., Carl and Christina spent 1 year in Bessemer, Michigan, and 1 year in Wardner, Idaho, before settling on farmland in the Palouse in the summer of 1889, and Washington later became a state in 1889. So the Osthellers have been in the valley for the entirety of the state's history. Here's a picture of the original Ostheller homestead, which borders the cemetery, which later became Robert Osteller's farm. The 160 acres purchased from the Northern Pacific Railroad Company was the beginning of the family farming in the valley, which is still active today, 135 years later. Carl became a naturalized citizen of the United States in 1892, 3 years before his death in 1895. When the Fairfield Cemetery was established, he was exhumed from his first resting place and moved here as one of the earliest members to the cemetery. His wife, Christina, pictured here on her birthday in 1908, outlived him by some 36 years. She passed away in 1931. In terms of which of their children were buried in this section of the cemetery, it's the men and their families, as the women tend to be buried away with their husbands' families. So Amelia Rokes, Lena Tees, Augusta Nelson are buried elsewhere. We have the stones for Fred and Minnie, Robert and Anna, and Will, my grandfather. Will was married 3 times in his life, and all his wives are buried here. First, Tilly Carlson, who he married in 1906. Then Clara Gerhauser in 1909, who was his wife for some 42 years and was the mother of his children. And finally to Emma B.D. Borensen in 1952, after Clara passed away in 1951. We have preserved Clara's creed, which she wrote down in 1910. Here's a picture of Will and Clara's house in 1924, where their 5 children grew up. This photo was of their family and was taken at the time of Harold's wedding in 1939, when my father, Orland, was called Bud. He was 14 years old. Will and Clara first had Carl in 1910, who married Bernice Pittman, and then later Leah Rodman Orchard, and died in 1975. Harold was born in 1915, who married Suzanne Hebner and died in 1993. Leona was born in 1918 and married Elwyn Timmy and died in 2001. Her ashes are with her husband's at Fairmount Memorial Park in Spokane. Claude was born in 1920 and married Evelyn Greenhill and then Dorothy Andrews Nielsen and died in 2001. Finally, my father Orland was born in 1925. He served in World War II from 1943 to 1945 and met his future wife, Betty Berger, after the war while he was studying architecture at WSU on the GI Bill. She was born in 1927 in Westboro, Ohio. She is pictured here in 1939 at 12 years old. She received a degree in art in 1948 and moved to Seattle for several years after college. I learned in my 20s that she had a daughter there, my half-sister named Roberta, who was adopted out. Betty then returned to the east side of the state and married my father in 1951. She had me in 1953, Kari in 1954, and Todd in 1957. Here we are pictured together in 2014. Orland only lived to be 55 and passed away because of cancer in 1980. And Betty outlived him by some 40 years, passing away in early 2021. They are buried next to each other here. Todd passed away unexpectedly in January of 2022, and we can see his headstone here as well. That's the history of the Ostheller plot of the Fairfield Cemetery up to today. Looking into the future, the family continues to grow. I first married Diane Sapu from North Dakota, then Ellen Harbold from Seattle, with whom I had two daughters, Mariah and Molly. Mariah married Kai Ware from Montana and had three children, Rosalind and Roland and Audie. I married Jorel Ingrid Johansson Cook in 2009, and she has a daughter, Olivia Cook. I moved with Ingrid to Sweden, where I now live. Kari married Bruce Fisher from Seattle and had two children, Peter and Dylan. Todd married Julie Shanks from the Baltimore, Maryland area, and they had Greta and Max. Greta married Daniel Coden and had two children, Quinn and Pierce. Max married Valerie Smith and also had two children, Orland and Smith. The family is now spread out across the country with folks in Oregon, Montana, and Maryland. I will now continue with the tour of the farming property, starting with the original homestead to show where it began. So here's where my grandfather grew up. He was 3 years old when they immigrated over from then called Prussian Empire, and then became Germany after that sometime. But this is where Carl started, and I think it was a 160-acre railroad property that they had every other quarter, and then they chose not to put the railroad through here, so he was able to buy it after working in some mines in Michigan and a wardener up by Kellogg, Idaho, until he landed here. And so when Grandpa became of age somehow, I guess was married or something, he ended up moving down there. You can kind of see it, the home place beyond that car that's coming over the hill. This is Truax Highway, is where he grew up, or he started his farming, and that's where my dad grew up. This is the old home place. I think my grandpa's brother side of the family got this place. I don't remember his name, but I know it was Robert Ostheller. It was the same age as my dad, or around there. His family owned this, and then they added on to the property. So I think there's a half section here now. Hello again. Now we're looking at an overview picture of Ostheller Farm's tracks, and with the little red square, that's where great-grandfather started. We've inserted in the map. This map is we used for the wind project, kind of showing where the power lines are and substations and such. But I'm going to be referring to these places so you can see it all here in just this one overview picture. Okay, here I am at Star Butte. This is a big section, or partial section next to the State Line Road. That's where I'm standing right now. The State Line Road here. And this is the old Nicholson place. There's a well in that group of trees. It's a hand-dug well, and there's also another hand-dug well up in the other group of trees. And there was an old house, and over there was a barn, two-story barn. And on the top there is timberland, and then the Spokane County has a rock quarry. So it's a beautiful piece of property. It's difficult to farm. My mom gave it a name, Misery Mountain, but it was never that much of a misery. Here's the other portion of there. That was the section along, or portion, was actually a 90-acre piece, correction strip along the state line, and then this is the bulk of the property. It has a little piece that comes clear up on top. This is a rock quarry, and this is the partial I own. So it looks more like this from the 19 and 24 quarter section. So again, you can kind of see it from here. Here we are looking at the Star Butte property again from Davis Road. Both the State Line and Davis Road are dirt roads at this point, but you can see the lay of the land. It's quite steep on the top side and more rolling, undulating on the bottom. Here's a picture of Davis Road. So we're facing north. There's Micah Peak off in the distance. We got Worley over there behind that ridge, and Plummer over behind that ridge over there. So Rock Creek Valley. It's kind of right in the middle of Rock Creek Valley, this butte. Over there is where our home place is, way over there. And up against this mountain, a far distance, is where the Fine Voss place is. This is a picture of the rock quarry, what's left of it now. It's pretty much overgrown. This is a picture of some of the trees. They're mostly all ponderosa pine here. Here's the old access road that comes up to the top. It's kind of a fire hazard, really. There's lots of grass in the middle, so if a car has a catalytic converter, it could start a fire. But we've had a little shower recently, so I'm walking up here to the top end of the rock quarry. They exceeded their boundary. The dad originally sold them, so they had to buy another little parcel. You can see that on the map. And here's the site where the Ostheller Farms owns. On top here where the stargazers come. Doesn't have very much light from any areas, It's often always windy here too, so it could be a very nice spot for a wind tower, but it sure be seen by everybody if it was up here. This is a view. We're looking up. There's the farm way up in the distance over there, the main farm, and there again is Fine Voss and the Coons Place. So the trees have really grown up here. They were just little trees when I was young. It's growing up. This property was always kept out of the corporation, and it was Mom inherited it when Dad passed away, and thanks to that we were able to support Mom's retirement with a little better income. So, and now it's part of Ostheller Farms. So this would probably be an ideal spot for a wind tower, but like I said, it'd be seen by everybody, but it'd be far from everybody. A picture of the Voss Place here on the top side, and then the 120 Fine Place. That's an aerial shot. The land, it doesn't have many steep hills. It's but the soil is more of a timber soil. There's Painter Road up here, and Star Road here, and Stafford Road here where the power line goes along. There we stand on the Voss Place. Randy Duncan is plowing out the grass. And we're looking here at the Fine Place where the tractor is now. It's 120 acres. He hasn't plowed it all out yet. The Voss Place, right here where I'm standing, is 70 acres of farmland. Goes all the way up the Painter Road along Star Road. Here we are again at the Fine Place, and the Voss Place is up there where the tractor and the dust is. That was originally owned by Claude Ostheller. That's who I bought it from. It was after Dad passed away. He offered it to me. And Dad inherited this 120 acres of the Fine Place, which we're looking at here next to the power lines. This is Stafford Road, and I'm not standing on Star Road, but Stafford Road is also a dirt road that goes along the power lines. And so Uncle Harold, he inherited the other 120 acres. There's 240 here that Grandpa had. And so it's this is the bottom side. So it's windy here today. See off in the distance Star Butte again. There's a picture of the aerial view of Coons Place. Section 21, there's the old home site there. Oh. There, now we're standing on the Coons Place half section. It borders Wheeler Highway here. There's Star Butte again in the distance. And there's Harvard Road down there on the north side of the property. And the home site's off in the distance. There's three main ridges, and then the top ridge with the row of trees is the western border. And it goes over to the grass field. So, and the next door neighbor is the Fultons, which we used to farm the Fulton Place. It's a very beautiful spot. The Coons Place house was two houses that were moved here. One used to be up where that old barn was, and the other half, I don't know where it came from, but they joined two houses together. We'll take a look at it. It's all falling down now. But This has been, Dad bought this from Coon's dad and mom when they decided to retire. And we bought it at a pretty good price, and it's been a good piece of land. That little corner of trees above the house site there on the northern side was something I planted it was before Dad passed away, and the trees are quite big now. But the windbreak has been there for quite a while. That would be an excellent place for a wind tower up there. But again, it would be seen by everybody. I don't know how people would think, what people would think, but I'm sure it would be a good spot. The Coons home site. The Laws's farm this place right now. This is a rental trailer. Seen better days. Here's the old Coons house. I don't know if it's safe to do a walkthrough or not, but I might try it. It's got a lot of fruit trees. The roof is mainly pretty good, but the north side is falling in. Oh, I'm just being unfortunate that has some hops growing on the building. It's taking over, actually. It's quite a crop. There was an old fireplace here on the one side. Backyard's all overgrown. Clothesline, there's a well. It's a hand-dug well. My gosh, it's so overgrown I don't even think I can get in. So, I made it in. Here's an old pantry. And there's a way down to the basement. Looks like the roof is completely gone. Here. Too scary to go down there. Here we have kind of a scene from a horror movie here. Kind of the roof falling apart. Probably the floor as well. It was a really nice kitchen at one time. Had a fireplace, or a wood stove in here. Here's the old bathroom. I don't think you can see anything probably. I don't know how to do the lights on this thing. There, it's a little better. Get the lights turned on now. This was the bathroom. Bedroom. It's got a lot of old junk left in here. Ceiling's coming down here too. Lots of egg cartons. Another bedroom. We found some of Mom's old stuff in here, but I don't think there's much left in here of any value. 85, 84. Okay, David Keno. Huh. Keno's lived here for a while in the trailer. Western pictures. This was a living room. One of the living rooms. Ceilings are all falling in. Here's the rotten north room. Really bad. There's a kind of a dining room complex. There's an old wood stove here. Seen better days. This upstairs. I don't know if it's safe to go up here or not. Some bedrooms up here too. Well, it looks like something's been living in here. Some pretty interesting old boards in here. I don't think that's hardwood. So, there's some hardwood here. I don't know if it's worth taking out. It's kind of buckled and compromised here. Probably has some value, I suppose. This was the front porch entryway. So I got a big tree in front now. Another pantry. Well, that's pretty much it. There is a old woodshed next door. There's an old root cellar down there. It's all boarded up. I don't know what's in there. The renters kind of have a lot of their stuff in here. Pretty trashy, as you see. Keith Gilbert has his travel trailer for his son John, and they've had a pickup here for quite a while. A few lawnmowers that don't look like they've been used much. Here's the old garage. Full of junk. Another old lawnmower. Here we are inside the old Kunst barn that we took out the second floor and made it into a bulk grass storage building. We have this rented to Alan Widman from Rosalia, and it looks like he's thinking of stopping that lease because there's nothing in here really anymore. So it's a great old building. We've had some trouble with the tin blowing off the roof. It's got a nice cement floor. So I don't know what's going on here, but he's been renting it from us for a few years now. There's the front of the building. I sold this to Alan Widman, this grain tank. He hasn't moved it. He's trying to figure out a spot for it. We had a little trouble with the corners blowing off, but the roof looks pretty good. Here's an outbuilding that still has a few items in it. An old Ford tractor that Mark Johnson is trying to use for field roguing. It's got narrow wheels I built for, so it doesn't leave a track. There's a pickup I need to work on the transmission. It isn't working right now. Here's the old farm boat, 16-foot fiber form. Hasn't been run since my kids were little. There's an old well down in these willows. And there's a pond down in the other willows below the house. So it's quite a nice building site. Potential it has, but it's in pretty bad position right now. Well, we got some steeper hill here on the farm, but it yields quite well. Old hay rake, which still works, is owned by a friend of Paul DeShields. He just said, why don't you just use it? I don't have a place to store it. So I used it for a few years, and I told Paul I was done with it, but here it still sits. It's really kind of an antique, iron wheels and everything. But I don't know what will happen to that. These are part of Keith and John Gilbert.
Okay.
And they're renting a view from the top side of Kuntz property. There, the Lawses are getting ready to do some mowing. There's the old home site, looking out into Idaho. And there's Star Butte. Looking off north. There's our home site. And here's that piece of timber that I planted when I first started with helping Dad in the mid-70s. Look, the trees have grown up so much. Dustin's mowing down some of the tall grass there by the old home site, there, the old Kuntz site. It's kind of getting tall and being a fire hazard. You can see Randy Duncan off in the distance, disking down the Boss Place, up next to the mountain up there by Painter Road. Here's a video of the home place, and then it connects with some of those other parcels. And here's the West Home property over here, 280s. Along this ridge is a real nice ridge here that could be a great spot for windmills. It's far from no house. It's far from most people. Well, here's a picture of our hay shed, which we have rented out to Lawses. We used to store bluegrass bales, big bales in here. It's quite a big space, open span, 60 by 120. And I think I don't know how tall it is, quite tall, you can tell. They have some of we put a gravel pad here, some trailers, farm trailers. There's the house up on the hill, some of our old barns, willows. Farm Quonset. Here's a picture of the Quonset shed. There's a hay shed in the distance. Mark has his combine parked here. Here's some of the willow trees that are getting aged and falling down that we have to deal with. There's several really big mature ones. That's the old original building that the Nelsons had when Dad bought the place. We built this one. It came in a kit, Dad and I can't remember, in the 80s sometime, or no, late 70s. It's all freestand inside, so it's quite a big space. I think it's a 40 by 80. Mark has another combine parked in here. We used to store barley in here, along with equipment. Seasonal creek that flows through here, through the willows. And Dad built this little bridge for us to be kids when we were little, and it's still here. It's kind of fallen down, but we've crossed this bridge many times when we were children, playing here in the willows. And as I said, the Nelsons, they were here in the early late 1880s probably. It was written on the barn. They had a two-story big barn here, this is now gone, that had 1880 something written on the roof rafter. So all that's remaining from that farmstead now is this pump house. They got a 10-foot dug well and these old lean-tos, which we have stored tires and a lawnmower. And on this side was an old shop, still kind of set up for a shop. And then Dad built this after he bought the place. So that would be in the mid-50s. He built the shop here. I remember riding around when it had fresh concrete when I was just a little guy on a bicycle, a tiny bicycle, going round and round and round inside here. But you can see, I think it's only like 30 by 50, something like that. It's full of stuff now. It's a good workspace. Here's a gas shed that Dad built. And we also built this equipment shed here. And then I had this breezeway added on. And now this has become a shop, workshop. So Mark Johnson works here. He's fixing the sprayer. The tire went flat, so he's off fixing that. This is well insulated. It's a 40 by 80. And that's where we fix everything all winter long. Lots of nuts and bolts and supplies in here. This is a cart that I built and Mark bought for bulk fertilizer, and the seed goes in this chamber and it gets blown out into the ground through a chisel. So we have lots of spare parts. Old workbench table that was sort of like the one that Dad had that burned up in the house fire. But battery bench. And it even has a little bathroom. So have to keep that heated. It has great halogen lights. This is Mark's tractor. Here's kind of the farmyard where we have some stored equipment here. It's all Mark Johnson's now. That one old combine actually was sold to Dave Duncan. He bought it for the tires. He hasn't got it yet. Here's something I installed, was a bulk diesel tank, and I built a containment. And of all the diesel tanks out here in Rock Creek Valley, I think this is the only containment. So it's kind of a rule that we're supposed to do that nobody does. It's the old home site up here in the trees. We had to have a big farmhouse that burned down. Haven't never really figured out what happened, but totally burned down. 1993. It's probably electrical. We had it remodeled a few times. It had a greenhouse on one end here. It's now been filled in with dirt and it's kind of a garden site, but it hasn't been used for a couple years now. This is a shed that my wife Ingrid's father built. He came over from Sweden, brought some windows with him, in fact, in his suitcase, and built this little playhouse for Olivia. And it needs some tender loving care. There's a trailer garage. We have farm Volkswagen. This is one that Todd used when he went to high school. It's a Super Beetle 74. I think it's the last year they made them. Anyway, it's got potential to get rejuvenated and sold. This is my old van. It was so close to the house fire it melted the windows, it was parked right here when the house fire, and it was so hot it melted the stop lights. But it still works, just kind of slow. Just a view of the farm with its new roof and a little windbreak. And the old bunkhouse, tree house I built for the kids. Used to have another story on top, but I took that off because it was going to blow off. And an old swing set and it's slowly rotting into the earth. And some sculptures and the old pump house. Little combine I made for the kids to play on. They could even crawl clear through it, just like the grain would do. We really probably should redo the pump house. It isn't deep enough to keep pipes from freezing. So every winter they have to put in heat tape. A lot of plums this year in the tree. Lots of plums. Lots of yellow jackets. This was close to the fire, kind of burned up. Some more fruit back here. My St. Francis of Assisi. He had a bird feeder in his hand. So this 40 acres that this whole home site's built on, this is what Dad, when he got started, he rented this all from the Nelsons. And in the early 50s, he bought 40 acres in the home site. And so the 40 acres kind of comes along where the house is and goes straight over to Harvard Road and includes all of this. That was the original purchase, first purchase Dad made when he started farming after completing just 2 years at college, WSU, on the GI Bill after World War II. His grandpa said, "Come on home, bud, you got this opportunity, won't last long. The Nelsons don't have any kids and they want you to farm it." So he came back and started farming 750 acres, and of which he ended up buying most of it. And then there's a piece over there across the way. You can see it's kind of dark brown. That was the other Nelson brother that had one daughter, Julia Patrick, and now the Hainers farm that. But Fred was married to Augusta, so that ground was part Ostheller at one time as well. Ostheller, Nelson. And there goes the losses with that same mower they were mowing. So this was lentils this year. And as we look north here, we can see that there's the tractors driving on Harvard Road. We farm everything on the left side of Harvard down there. And on the right side is also another piece of ground that's owned by the Nelsons that Mark Johnson is farming now, not the Hainers. The Patrick Trust, they call it. So when we're looking north here, you can see the line between the lentil crop and the wheat crop up on the ridge there. Follow that line, it goes straight down this 80-acre piece that the farm sits on, and then it goes off to the left, or would be west, and then it goes all the way over to the ridge of stubble that is on there's a 280s over there, so 160 acres. And that's the ridge I was talking about. It'd be great for a windmill. You could see it from here, but it's not directly in front of the house. You'd have to really go outside to see it, if there was ever one there. And there's the old home site down there where those tall trees are. That's where my grandpa Will lived. He built that up, and it's where my dad grew up. So now we've connected, we've bought some of the Holsizer and Carlson ground to connect this 80 all the way across to the old home site. across the Truex Highway. So all we can, and then you can see the distance, Adams 80. So it's almost all connected from here clear over to the stubble field that's going up Harvard Road again. There's a line up there of some bluegrass, I think, goes over. So it's kind of nice to have a big chunk here. And over this way, the Laws's farm up there on the hill up there. And it's a farmhouse. Got a beautiful aspect here. It's looking up at Keno Woods. And over towards Idaho and up towards Painter Road. Over towards Kuntz Place. Mountain above Worley and Plummer. And then off that direction is Coeur d'Alene Lake, about 15 miles or so from here. And there's Star Butte. And Micah Peak is up there along Elder Road. Very picturesque spot. So this pipe, and it's in the old greenhouse. There's the power for, could be a good site to develop someday, maybe. It's got power. This pipe anyway goes all the way down to the pond underground, and it was able to pump water up from there, filter it, and water what used to be a garden here. Used to have a garden all along here. It's a big one. Now it's just weeds. And this was our favorite plane tree that had a swing. It finally bit the dust. So Ellen's doing a great job of mowing and keeping things somewhat presentable here. But as you can see, it's kind of a jungle. This is what happens when a home site gets abandoned, really. It starts to get overgrown. These are old locust trees. They were here in the Nelsons. They probably planted these in the 1880s. Really old. Beautiful in the springtime. And we have our power underground clear to this point, and it used to come up and from this pole and go above ground, but now it's all underground up to the house too. And there's a dug well, or drilled well up. I didn't show you, but it's up by the root cellar or the old pump house. And there is a buried line going clear down to the pump house there, but it's no longer being used. These juniper bushes are just taking over there. Pretty amazing. This is the leftovers from the juniper bushes that were around the house. Trying to get them good and dry so they could be hauled off, so not so much weight. But this is the old home site. There's where the barn used to be. It's also kind of a garden spot, it was. It's been filled in with dirt. There's the Keno homestead over there. There we stand at the section line. You can see a fence post here. And this is Harvard Road. Looking north towards Micah Peak, you can see that the road winds. Our field is straight. If you go straight, it's on the left. And that on the right, 6.8 acres is part of the Nelson property, which is now Patrick Trust, and it's farmed by, this portion is farmed by Mark Johnson, but the other portion down there on the old Reifenberger place, which Reifenbergers bought the ground from the Nelsons, and so Hainers are farming that. So here's a section line. And if you look due west, you can see the division of our 160 acre that goes off clear up to where, almost where that plowing is up there on the foot of the hill. And then it goes over to the north about the same distance. So we have a big chunk here. And that's looking back up towards the farmhouse. So we're looking at the dividing line. This portion on the north side, or my left hand side, we own this little field here. It joins right with the Patrick Trust land that we used to farm, that Mark Johnson's farming now, along Harvard Road. And so it's cash rent, and then it's farmed together, but Mark separates out this little flat for us. And then we've purchased the this 40, and it goes clear up to the top of the hill there, where the old home place is, where Will Ostheller used to live. And then it goes clear over. You can see the intersection of the true Harvard Road over there. It goes to that point. Then there's a 40 that's left out for the whole sizers here, this house here. And then back again to our property, you can see the difference as the ridge line goes up. The left side is ours, the right side is, well, actually that's, it's lost ground now too. Rock Creek is right down along the power lines there. It floods over quite a bit, so this is kind of a floodplain down here. We've had water clear up all over this, like a little lake. You can kind of see the bridge down there by the willow tree. And could be a future site for the fishing game. They want to have a little buffer strip, so we might have that to look forward to in the future. This is Rock Creek. At the end of summer, doesn't really have much flow. It's a very big concern for you can't really dredge it or anything anymore. So it fills in with dirt, and then the water all over the farmland. So this was all formed by the Army Corps of Engineers. I remember as a child when they did that, they had big old cranes in here, or big earth moving equipment dug out the creek, but yet we can't maintain it. It was formed by the government, but the government says, no, you gotta let it go back to its wild, braided nature. I tried to make a little dike along here, keep the water out, but it floods over every year pretty much. This is going to be a problem in the future. Hopefully not too much. Here again, we're looking back at Harvard Road and Rock Creek and Truex Highway. Looking south, you can see the distant farmhouse on a ridge, and our property is all along this flat over here. It's kind of over towards that little green truck, and then it comes up here. We call this the north home. And there's a middle home, and then over there, that ridge that goes to the west is called West Home, and then the old home, our home place there, and then up here's where Grandpa used to, where his farmstead was up here. We're looking at the north edge of the north home, looking back again towards the south. You can kind of see the lay of the land. This ridge here would be a good spot for wind power, but it can be seen by everybody. So here it's standing at the corner of the old home place where Grandpa, when he bought, I don't know, probably back in the 30s or so, when he was a young man, probably through some contact with the marriage he had, and he was able to buy this piece of land. It's really nice land. It's now owned by the Ostheller brothers. It would have been the oldest son, Carl, my dad's oldest brother, his offspring, they had 4 brothers, Carl, Gary, Lowell, and Don. And so they own half of this, and then I own the other part I bought from Leona, another one of Dad's sisters. She sold it to me, the 70 acres plus a little bit on the other side of the creek. Rock Creek goes on down. This is Davis Road here. So we're looking straight north. You can kind of see there's a part of the field across the creek that is on this side of the line. That's part I own. And the other side, all the way over to where that semi-truck is what we call the Adams 80. There's an 80-acre parcel over there. You can see a few rocky spots here and there, and a wet spot up there. But it's really pretty good land. And you really can't see too much of the west home from here. But there's the whole Ostheller place, and then again there's there's our farmstead way up there in the distance by the mountain. Looking off towards the Goose Place, and off in the distance. Here we're looking at kind of the formerly organic, I used to call it. This was organic for many years, but it's a 40 we bought from Ann Carlson. This flat here, it goes pretty much straight over from this point, and then there's a 40 that connects where there's down by the ditch that we bought from Randy Ostheller for Ostheller Farms. And then this portion in here is owned by the Osthellers, and it's split in two by, I don't know the name of the family that owns one half. It was sold from the Adams family. So, and this is Harvard Road that goes up over the hill into the rock quarry. So it's sort of a continuation here. There's the Adams 80 over there. And then up there across from the road to cut is the North Home, and there's Rock Creek that flows through there. Star Butte in the distance. Here's where the Harvard Road, true Harvard Road, dead ends into the field. This is our west home field. You can kind of see that goes off. The left side, or the right side is not ours, but the stubble side is ours. And there's a nice ridge that goes up along there that I don't think anybody can see. It'd be a nice spot for a wind tower or two. And then you can't really see, but this is a 160-acre chunk here. And then it goes into the 120-acre chunk that goes all the way up to our farmhouse. This is a rock quarry that probably here in pioneering times, actually. I thought I'd walk up and just kind of show you a little bit of that ridge over there in the field. This is the north border of West Home. There's where the road ends, True Harvard Road. Rock quarry, Ostheller 40. This was a Barry Ostheller. And Carlson owned one half of this 160, and then Dan Ostheller owned the other half, and I bought it from them a few years ago for Ostheller Farms. And then Randy had a 40 down there, and then the Carlson had another 40. Section line. Here's the farmhouse. On the left side is the part of the 120 acres that is home, I call home, and then this right side is from this parcel called Westholme. Okay, here I am again on the border between Westholme and Home Place. You can see the house off in the distance there. And what's interesting to me is that when Ed and Lizzie Nelson lived here in those days, pioneering days really, the road went up the section line. So they had their horse and buggy, they had to go down, cross this creek, and go straight up that really steep hill, and then go down, and then go up another steep hill, down, up another steep hill, and then finally up to their place. And I think that section line road was in place for many years, even after automobiles came. There's an old evidence of an old piece of concrete that they poured right into the water so they could drive through the creek, but not in the mud. It's still there. And then looking back this way, that portion of the road still exists. But all these roads out here were on section lines. They didn't go up like the new Harvard Road, we call it, follows a nice contour up. The old roads were just all straight, going up and down and over. You can see right now they're fertilizing, getting ready for winter wheat over there on that field. It has a diagonal line of brown and stubble. The Hainers are farming that. That's the Julia Patrick place. So that would be Tim and Ron and their son Ron and Nathan. Nathan and Ronnie are the ones that are the current generation, I guess, but they all chip in. So this long ridge also would be great for wind. It's always windy up here. It is today even. But because, I don't know, Molly can see it pretty evidently, but it isn't really in the view line either. But there's a lot of area here. I know they say only one tower per 150 acres, but it looks like they could easily put a couple towers on this property. A town field. There's a Good Samaritan home here in the middle, kind of in the middle, and then here the southern border. It's got some fairly good ridges. It'd be a good spot along the bottom here for maybe wind towers. And we don't actually own this portion here. This is owned by Good Samaritan. They've been trying to sell it. They wanted too much. I never bought it, but these pieces here are actually what we own. It isn't that piece. Well, that's the town of Fairfield. So state high, the railroad track, and then here's the highway 27, and this is Truax Highway coming in here, and Bradshaw going out there. That way's north. Here we are at one of the more recent purchases. Well, I guess it wasn't most recent. It was done, I think in mid 80s, when Mr. Fisher had a tragic accident and flipped over a swather and died, and the estate chose to sell the land. There's 110 acres of cropland here, and here's this ridge that we're talking about, possible for wind energy. I'm looking at looking due west. That row of trees is on the property line, on our property, and there's another couple ridges that go up and over, clear over to the highway almost, the highway 27 goes through Fairfield. There's the home and Fairfield and the fire station and the grain, outside grain tank, or storage areas where piles of grain. We have too much. So there's Micah Peak off in the distance. The property comes down here right to the road, right to Truax. Very nice, very good soil. The nursing home, except for the north side is not owned by us. It's owned by the Good Samaritan Society. Here's another view of the town field. It's got a little seasonal creek and a wet area here, and several little draws that go up. But the property is marked by the trees, the tall trees, clear over into the corner of the property over there near the highway 27. So there's a nice long ridge that's far away from town, really, that gets good wind and could possibly be developed into wind energy. I don't know. 110 acres here of cropland. And when I have to correct myself, when it wasn't me that bought it, it was Ostheller Farms that bought it, and the board approved all these purchases that we've made. Here we are at the home field looking at the west border. It goes clear down next to a little seasonal creek and also a small road along the railroad. And you can see Highway 27 over there. It's right next to the property. And right in that clump of trees where I'm facing right there is a hand-dug well. I don't know how deep it is, but it's quite large on the top. It's like at least 8 feet by 8 feet. I put a structure on top, but it's wooden. So we have to always make sure that that is well protected, because if a kid fell in there, it wouldn't be good. So anyway, it's there's that ridge we were talking about. There's some really mature trees that probably should be actually, some of them thinned out, logged out. Might have to ask Mark Johnson about that. He is a logger. They're fir trees too, and they're good and straight. They're probably worth some money. Right now they're just kind of breaking off and falling in the field. But this is a really good place. We did some tile work here. It's very productive land. This little strip along here, you can kind of see this windbreak is sticking out. It's kind of a curve here. Well, if you continue this curve straight down, there's a little sliver here owned by the Good Samaritan Society, or possibly, I don't know if it was purchased by Fairfield Care, and I don't know how that went down, but there's a little sliver along here 100 feet or so. It's not owned by Ostheller Farms, but we farm it anyway. Well, and here's the nursing home parking lot. Nursing home right there. This was where Colonel Morris was at his homestead before the nursing home. And there's pictures in there, historical pictures of when the Indians used to come over and set up their teepees down in the flat down below the home here, and visited with Colonel Morrison. Very interesting. And at the town field, a little different perspective. This is looking out east on the property. You can kind of see the wet area down there, seasonal creek. That's where the teepees were set up, down there in the flat. It was just a big meadow at the time. And they'd walk up the hill here to Colonel Morrison's house. There's the city of Fairfield, the water tower, the eastern side of the facility. The Fisher farmstead was over there where the barn fell down. So, fire station, the grain outdoor piles mechanism. And looking back towards Rock Creek Valley there.